I need to first read the file you've uploaded to understand the content that needs to be rewritten. The night of July 5th, 1942, hangs heavy over the Bay of Biscay. A full moon spills silver across black water, and somewhere in that darkness, German U-boats are breathing. Squadron leader Jefferson Herbert Greswell strains through the windscreen of his Wellington bomber searching for enemies he cannot see. His aircraft carries ASV Mark II radar, capable of detecting a surface submarine from 10 miles away. The mathematics favor him, the physics do not. By the time his Wellington closes that final gap, the U-boat hears the engines, sounds the alarm, and slips beneath the waves in under a minute. Month after month, Coastal Command aircraft find targets on radar and arrive to find nothing but empty ocean. The toll is devastating. In 1941, the Royal Air Force sinks exactly one submarine in these waters. One. Meanwhile, German submarines are devouring merchant shipping at a rate of 400,000 tons per month. Britain stands 12 weeks from starvation. The U-boats are winning, and nobody knows how to stop them. 12,000 miles away from this moonlit graveyard, in a workshop at RAF Chivener in Devon, a middle-aged officer surrounded by car headlights and aircraft landing lights is sketching modifications to what looks like a retractable dustbin. His commanding officers consider him a fool. His fellow pilots consider him insane. The Air Ministry engineers who understand physics have already declared his idea technically impossible. What Wing Commander Humphrey de Verdun Leigh does not know, what nobody in Coastal Command knows, is that his illicit experiment is about to rewrite the rules of naval warfare. Within 5 months, his invention will sink more submarines in the Bay of Biscay than the entire Royal Air Force managed in the previous 2 years of war. Within 2 years, U-boat commanders will refuse to surface at night even when their batteries are dead and their crews are suffocating. German sailors will come to call these waters the Valley of Death. Admiral Dönitz will lose so many submarines that he temporarily withdraws his entire wolfpack fleet from the North Atlantic. And it all begins with a car headlight, a stubborn refusal to accept impossibility, and one officer too ignorant to know what he supposedly cannot do. To understand why Britain is bleeding out in the Atlantic in 1942, you must first understand darkness. German Type 7 U-boats cannot win fair fights. On the surface, they move slowly, carry only 14 torpedoes, and possess armor so thin that depth charges turn them into scrap. Submerged, they become nearly blind, crawling at 7 knots on batteries that die after 90 minutes. But at night, they become something else entirely. A U-boat commander surfaces under cover of darkness, recharges his batteries, races ahead of the convoy at 17 knots, and submerges before dawn to attack from perfect position. For the first 2 years of war, Coastal Command cannot touch them. The mathematics are simple and merciless. In 1940, Air Vice Marshal Frederick Bohill assumes command of Coastal Command and inherits an impossible problem. His aircraft can find submarines with radar, but radar provides only bearing and distance. By the time a pilot finally sees his target visually, that target is already diving. The attack window lasts exactly 23 seconds, the time between visual acquisition and complete submergence. No crew in the world can close that gap. The British try everything. They drop flares, but the flares take 18 seconds to illuminate and warn the submarine of incoming death. They install more powerful engines, but U-boat crews hear them from miles away. They develop acoustic torpedoes, but without visual confirmation, the weapons miss by hundreds of yards. They train crews to attack faster, but physics cares nothing for training. Month after month, Coastal Command crews execute perfect radar approaches, arrive precisely on target, and attack empty water. Squadron commanders file reports listing probable damage and oil slicks observed. Admiral Dönitz knows the truth. They're hitting nothing. By spring 1942, the experts have reached consensus. The head of Coastal Command's development unit, the RAF's elite innovation squadron, concludes that successful night attacks on surfaced submarines are technically unfeasible given current limitations. The mathematics simply do not work. The physics simply do not allow it. Then Humphrey de Verdun Leigh arrives at the development unit and begins asking uncomfortable questions. Leigh is 44 years old, ancient by RAF standards. He learned to fly in the Royal Flying Corps during the Great War, then spent 2 decades bouncing between squadrons, never quite fitting in, never quite earning promotion. He possesses no formal engineering training, no degree in physics or mathematics, no credentials that would qualify him to solve complex technical problems. What he possesses is 1,500 hours flying maritime patrols and a stubborn refusal to accept expert consensus, when that consensus means watching merchant ships sink. In January 1941, while stationed at the Coastal Command Development Unit, Leigh sits in on a technical briefing about the night attack problem. The engineering officer explains with charts and equations why it is physically impossible to illuminate a submarine target at night without warning. Flares descend too slowly. Landing lights draw too much power. Flash bombs would blind the pilot. Leigh raises his hand. What if we mounted a powerful searchlight on the aircraft and turned it on at the last possible second? The room goes silent. Then everyone laughs. The engineering officer patiently explains that aircraft generators cannot power a searchlight strong enough to illuminate a submarine from attack altitude. Even if they could, the weight would make the aircraft unflyable. Even if it did not, the battery pack required would consume the entire bomb bay. The idea violates 3 separate laws of electrical engineering. Leigh nods politely. Then he goes to his workshop and starts building it anyway. He has no authorization, no budget, no team, only a growing certainty that the experts are wrong. Over the next 4 months, while officially performing his regular duties, Leigh converts car headlamps, salvages aircraft landing lights, and tests increasingly powerful carbon arc searchlights mounted on retractable housings. His fellow officers think he is having a breakdown. His commanding officer threatens disciplinary action for wasting military resources. On June 3, 1942, Leigh flies his first operational mission with his jury-rigged searchlight installed in a Wellington on Bomb Bay. That night, he changes naval warfare forever. Squadron leader Humphrey de Verdun Leigh should not exist as a war hero. Born in Aldershot in 1897, the son of a vicar, Leigh joined the Royal Flying Corps in 1916 and flew reconnaissance missions over the Western Front. When the Great War ended, he resigned his commission and disappeared into civilian life. Most of his fellow pilots assume he is done with flying. Then September 1939 arrives. Britain declares war on Germany, and 42-year-old Humphrey Leigh walks back into an RAF recruitment office and asks for his old job back. The RAF is desperate for experienced pilots, so they overlook his age and lack of combat decorations. They post him to Coastal Command, the maritime patrol force that everyone considers a backwater assignment, while fighter command pilots become celebrities and bomber command crews earn glory over Germany. Coastal command crews fly endless patrols over empty ocean, searching for submarines they can rarely find and almost never sink. Leigh does not care about glory, he cares about mathematics. During his first year back in service, he flies more than 300 hours of anti-submarine patrols. He fills notebooks with calculations, radar detection ranges, aircraft approach speeds, submarine dive times, visual acquisition distances. His fellow pilots think he is obsessive. Squadron commander thinks he is wasting time that should be spent drinking in the officer's mess. But Leigh sees something nobody else sees. The mathematics work, the timing works. The only missing element is light. The breakthrough comes on a routine night patrol in December 1941. Leigh is flying a Wellington when his radar operator picks up a submarine contact. Leigh begins his approach, slow descent, engines throttled back, perfect course. Then, at half a mile from target, his co-pilot spots a fishing boat with its lights on. For exactly 3 seconds, those lights illuminate the water. In those 3 seconds, Leigh sees the submarine's conning tower, black against moonlit water. Then the fishing boat turns away. The lights sweep elsewhere and darkness returns. By the time Leigh reaches the attack position, the submarine has dived. But Leigh has seen enough. The problem is not power or weight or electrical engineering. The problem is duration. Flares burn for 30 seconds, long enough to warn the submarine. What he needs is 3 seconds of intense light activated at the last possible moment. Back at base, Leigh sketches his first design on a napkin, a powerful carbon arc searchlight 24 inches in diameter, mounted in a retractable housing beneath the aircraft. The pilot keeps it off during the entire radar approach, maintaining complete silence and darkness. Then, at exactly 50 feet altitude and 50 yards from target, he flips a switch. 22 million candle power of light erupts from beneath the aircraft, turning night into day, freezing the submarine crew in perfect illumination, giving the bombardier precisely 3 seconds to drop depth charges before the U-boat can react. 3 seconds. That is all he needs. The next morning, Leigh requests a meeting with his commanding officer and explains his idea. The response is immediate and devastating. The device is completely illegal under current electrical specifications. It is physically impossible. Request denied. Humphrey Leigh does it anyway. He has no official permission, no budget, and no engineering team. What he has is access to the development unit's workshops and a grudging tolerance from mechanics who have seen too many good ideas die in committees. Leigh starts with car headlamps, modified, rewired, and mounted on a wooden frame. Too weak. He moves to aircraft landing lights, brighter but still inadequate. He needs something that can illuminate a target from 200 feet in total darkness. In March 1942, Leigh finds it, a 24-inch naval carbon arc searchlight designed for battleships, pulling power that would blow every fuse on a Wellington bomber. The RAF electrical engineers are right about one thing. His aircraft generator cannot power this monster. So Leigh does not use the generator. He designs a massive battery pack, connects it directly to the searchlight, and installs the entire assembly in a retractable housing that drops beneath the fuselage like a bomb. The Leigh Light, as other pilots mockingly call it, adds 800 pounds to the aircraft's weight and reduces the bomb load by 4 depth charges. His commanding officer discovers the project in May 1942. The confrontation is volcanic. Leigh has violated 3 separate Air Ministry directives. He has wasted ground resources. He has installed unauthorized equipment on operational aircraft. He should face court-martial. Leigh stands at attention, maintaining perfect military bearing. With respect, sir, I request permission to conduct one operational test. If it does not work, I will personally dismantle every component at my own expense and accept any punishment you deem appropriate. The commanding officer stares at him for a full 10 seconds. One test. If you fail, you are done. Clear? Yes, sir. On the night of June 3, 1942, Leigh takes off from RAF Chivener in Wellington, serial number ES 986. His crew thinks this will be his last flight before reassignment to a desk job. His co-pilot, an Australian named Alan Triggs, has volunteered specifically to witness what he calls Leigh's suicide mission. The flight plan is simple. Patrol the Bay of Biscay until radar picks up a submarine, then use the unauthorized searchlight for one attack run. Either the light works, or Leigh's career ends tonight. At 2:17 a.m., a DAR operator picks up a contact 12 miles ahead. Leigh throttles back, begins his descent, approaches in total darkness. The submarine is running on the surface, recharging batteries, completely unaware that death is descending from above. Leigh levels at 50 feet, lines up on the radar bearing, holds steady. At 200 yards he can see nothing, just black water reflecting moonlight. At 100 yards, still nothing. His bombardier calls range over the intercom, 70 yards, 60, 50. Leigh reaches for the switch, and the night explodes into day. 22 million candle power of pure white light erupts from beneath the Wellington, turning the Bay of Biscay into a theater stage. There, frozen in perfect clarity, is the Italian submarine Luigi Torelli. Crew scrambling on deck, conning tower gleaming, wake spreading white behind her. Leigh's bombardier needs no instruction. The depth charges drop. 3 seconds later, the light switches off. The submarine lives, but it is crippled, unable to dive, captured by surface ships. The next morning, Leigh radios base with 4 words, "The device functions perfectly." 2 days later, Leigh stands before a review board at Coastal Command headquarters. Present are his station commander, 2 Air Ministry engineers, a representative from the Admiralty, and Air Chief Marshal Sir Philip Joubert de la Ferte, the newly appointed Commander-in-Chief of Coastal Command. The mood is hostile. The senior Air Ministry engineer opens the attack. Squadron Leader Leigh, your unauthorized modification violates Section 7, Paragraph 4 of Air Ministry Order 19,416, which expressly forbids installation of non-standard electrical equipment exceeding generator capacity. You have bypassed safety systems, installed unapproved batteries, and created a significant fire hazard. This device should be immediately removed from service. Leigh remains standing. With respect, sir, the device successfully illuminated a submarine target and enabled an attack that damaged an enemy vessel. The Admiralty representative cuts in. Damaged, not sunk. You crippled an Italian submarine that was subsequently captured by surface ships. Congratulations. You have created an 800-pound weight penalty that reduces our bomb load to achieve something our destroyers could have accomplished anyway. Because I attacked with training depth charges, Leigh responds. In operational configuration with full weapon load, the target would have been destroyed. The room erupts. 3 officers begin shouting simultaneously. The station commander demands documentation. The engineers insist on 3 months of safety testing. The Admiralty representative questions the entire premise of night attacks. Leigh stands at attention, saying nothing, while his career burns around him. Then Air Chief Marshal Joubert raises one hand. The room goes silent. Joubert has been Commander-in-Chief of Coastal Command for exactly 8 days. He took command on June 5th, 2 days before Leigh's unauthorized mission. He is a pragmatist who has spent the last week reviewing statistics that make him physically ill. 1 submarine sunk in the Bay of Biscay in all of 1941. 1. Meanwhile, U-boats are sinking 60 Allied ships per month. Joubert looks directly at Leigh. How many submarines could you sink per month if I gave you 10 aircraft equipped with this device? Leigh does not hesitate. 5, sir, minimum. The engineer nearly chokes. That is absurd. You have conducted exactly 1 test. 6? Joubert interrupts. I would settle for 6 submarines if you could sink 1 per week. He turns to his staff. Gentlemen, I have reviewed Squadron Leader Leigh's service record. 1,500 hours of maritime patrol, 2 years in the development unit, 0 disciplinary incidents. Until this one. He broke regulations because regulations were stopping him from winning the war. Now you can spend 3 months testing his device while another 200 merchant ships sink. Or you can install his searchlight on every available Wellington in 172 Squadron and see what happens. I choose option 2. The room erupts again, but this time Joubert lets it. After 30 seconds, he stands. Everyone goes silent. Squadron Leader Leigh, you are hereby promoted to Wing Commander and assigned to command 172 Squadron. You will equip your squadron with your searchlight device and conduct operational patrols beginning no later than July 1st. You will train your pilots personally. You will submit weekly kill reports directly to my office. You will prove your device works, or you will accept full responsibility for wasting resources during wartime. Clear? Yes, sir. Dismissed. As Leigh leaves the room, the Admiralty representative makes one final protest. Sir, with respect, we are basing operational doctrine on 1 partially successful test of unauthorized equipment designed by an officer with no engineering qualifications. Joubert cuts him off. Do you know what our current success rate is for night attacks on submarines? 0.3%. That is not doctrine. That is statistical noise. Wing Commander Leigh just gave us our first confirmed night attack in 2 years. I will take amateur hour over expert failure any day of the week. 72nd Squadron receives its first Leigh Light-equipped Wellington on June 15th, 1942. By July 1st, 12 aircraft carry the modification. None of the pilots believe it will work. Flight Lieutenant Norman Marrington voices what everyone is thinking during the briefing. So, we are supposed to fly at 50 feet in darkness over open ocean and turn on a spotlight that weighs 800 pounds and might blind us if we look at it wrong. And this is somehow safer than dropping flares. Leigh stands at the front of the briefing room, utterly calm. The Leigh Light activates for 3 seconds. In those 3 seconds, you will have perfect visual on a surfaced submarine at attack distance. Your bombardier will have a clear target. The U-boat crew will be frozen in shock, unable to man deck guns or reach the hatch. You will drop your depth charges and be gone before they recover. That is the theory. Now we test it. The first kill comes faster than anyone expects. On July 5, 1942, exactly 1 month after Leigh's first test, Pilot Officer William B. Howell takes off from RAF Chivener on a routine night patrol. Howell is an American volunteer, 22 years old, flying his 8th mission with 172 Squadron. He has never used the Leigh Light in combat. At 11:34 p.m., his radar operator picks up a contact, U-502, a Type 7 submarine commanded by Kapitänleutnant Jürgen von Rosenstiel, returning from a successful patrol in the Caribbean. The submarine is running on the surface, making 17 knots, confident that darkness provides safety. Howell begins his approach exactly as Leigh taught him: throttle back, slow descent, maintain absolute radio silence. At 3 miles he can see nothing, just darkness and moonlight reflecting on waves. At 1 mile, still nothing. At 200 yards, his navigator calls out that the target should be dead ahead. Howell sees only water. At 50 yards, he flips the switch. The Leigh Light transforms night into noon. There, frozen in perfect illumination, is U-502. Deck crew scrambling. Officers diving for the hatch. Wake spreading white. Howell's bombardier does not need instructions. 6 depth charges drop in perfect stick, bracketing the submarine's pressure hull. 3 seconds later, the light switches off. Howell banks hard right, climbing already. Turning for home. Behind him, U-502 breaks in half and sinks in under 2 minutes. All 52 crew members die. None survive long enough to send a distress signal. The next morning, Howell lands at Chivener and files a report that changes history. Submarine illuminated at 0237 hours. Attacked with depth charges. Target destroyed. Requests permission for additional patrols. Leigh reads the report 3 times, then walks to Joubert's office and places it on his desk without comment. Joubert reads it once, then he picks up his phone and calls the Air Ministry. "This is Joubert. I want Leigh Lights installed on every Wellington in Coastal Command. Not next month. Now." The kills accelerate. July 7th, Squadron Leader Jefferson Greswell, Leigh's own co-pilot from the first test, illuminates and attacks U-159. Damaged beyond repair, the submarine limps to port and never returns to sea. July 13th, U-751 caught recharging on the surface, sunk in one attack. July 16th, U-335 destroyed in the Bay of Biscay. No survivors. By August, RAF Coastal Command is sinking more submarines in the Bay of Biscay than in the previous 12 months combined. U-boat commanders stop surfacing at night. Admiral Dönitz issues emergency orders. All boats will recharge batteries during daylight hours only. Night surface operations are suspended until further notice. But daylight operations mean RAF fighters and radar-equipped ships and convoys with air cover. The U-boats are trapped. Surface at night and face the Leigh Light. Surface by day and face everything else. Either way, they face death. The statistics tell the story. In the 5 months before the Leigh Light becomes operational, RAF Coastal Command sinks 7 submarines in the Bay of Biscay. In the 5 months after, they sink 41. The success rate jumps from 0.3% to 40%, a 100-fold increase from one modificati. On designed by one officer with no engineering degree. On the night of June 7th to 8th, 1944, Flying Officer Kenneth Owen Moore takes the Leigh Light technology to its ultimate expression. Moore is a 22-year-old Canadian flying a B-24 Liberator from RAF Streeteval on D-Day+1. His mission, patrol the approaches to the English Channel and prevent U-boats from attacking the Normandy invasion fleet. At 9:17 p.m., Moore's radar detects a submarine. He approaches in total darkness, activates the Leigh Light at 50 yards, illuminates U-441, and drops 6 depth charges. The submarine sinks in 90 seconds. Moore turns for home. Then, at 2:39 a.m., exactly 22 minutes later, his radar detects a second submarine. He repeats the approach, activates the light. U-413 explodes in a fireball visible from 20 miles away. Moore lands at Streeteval with this entry in his combat log, sighted 2 subs. Sank both. Same mission. This mission, Moore receives the Distinguished Service Order and the American Silver Star. His gunners and navigator receive Distinguished Flying Crosses. The Liberator receives a fresh coat of paint and a new nickname, Killer Moore. The end of World War II, Leigh Lights have been installed on 1,800 aircraft across RAF Coastal Command, Royal Canadian Air Force squadrons, and U.S. Navy patrol bombers. The device directly contributes to the sinking of 212 U-boats, more than 1/4 of all German submarines lost in the Atlantic. Admiral Dönitz later writes in his memoirs, "The introduction of the searchlight aircraft made it impossible to operate effectively at night. This single weapon, more than any other, forced us to abandon our wolfpack tactics and cost us the Battle of the Atlantic." 1943, a U-boat commander captured after his submarine was illuminated and destroyed by a Leigh Light tells his interrogator, Tors, we called it das Licht des Todes, the light of death. You would be running on the surface, confident in the darkness, and then God himself would flip a switch and turn you into a target. It lasted 3 seconds. That was enough. The technology saves an estimated 400,000 Allied sailors and merchant seamen. Humphrey de Verdun Lee receives no public recognition during the war. His invention remains classified until 1946. When the war ends, he continues serving in the RAF, eventually retiring as an air commodore in 1962. He refuses every interview request, declines every invitation to speak at military conferences. When the RAF Museum asks permission to display his original workshop prototype, he writes back, "The device worked because good men flew it. Tell their stories, not mine." Lee dies on November 19, 2000, at age 83. His obituary in the Times runs 4 paragraphs, mostly about his administrative service in the 1950s. The Leigh Light gets 1 sentence, but in 2008, the RAF finally installs a permanent exhibition about the Leigh Light at the RAF Museum in Hendon. The centerpiece is Lee's original workshop prototype, the jury-rigged searchlight built from car parts and salvaged landing lights, held together with wire and hope. Beneath it, a plaque reads, "Designed in violation of regulations, built without authorization, installed against direct orders. Saved 400,000 lives." William B. Howell, the young American who got the first Leigh Light kill, later becomes Captain Howell, commanding the aircraft carrier USS Bennington. In 1965, at a reunion of 172 squadron survivors, he meets the aging wing commander Lee and says, "Sir, because of you, I lived long enough to get married. So did 300 other pilots. We owe you everything." Lee smiles and shakes his head. "You owe yourselves everything. I just gave you a better flashlight. The lesson is not subtle." Humphrey de Verdun Lee did not have an engineering degree. He did not have official authorization. He did not have expert consensus. What he had was a problem that needed solving and the courage to ignore everyone who said it could not be done. The experts were wrong. The regulations were wrong. The established doctrine was wrong. And a middle-aged wing commander with a car headlight and a dream was right. Sometimes the most important words in military history are not yes, sir, or following orders. Sometimes they are simply, watch this.